Welcome to Shattered Reality with your hosts Kate Valentine and Fahrusha. Prepare to have your paradigms shifted and your truths questioned. And now, Shattered Reality.
Here we are again.
That's the truth. Hey, Kate.
Yes.
So it's Fahrusha here, Fahrusha and Kate for Shattered Reality Podcast number 71.
Yeah.
Who could believe it? I know I say this every time we go past each number, but it seems quite amazing. When we first started out, we didn't know how long we could keep the ball rolling here, but we're doing pretty well. And we're facing immediately in front of us, or we've just started it, depending on how you want to look at it, summer 2018.
Yeah.
So to slate our stuff today, we're going to say it is June 26th, 2018.
Yeah.
And here we are at Shattered Reality once again. So I've slated. So what's up with you, Kate?
Not much. I'm really looking forward to our guest today. She's a fascinating woman that's accomplished terrific tasks in really what is a man's world in all areas of her interest. So I know she's been on the show before, but I find her to be fascinating, and I could hardly wait to speak to her again.
Myself as well, and I just want to add that we are very interested in promoting women who have done things in the field of the paranormal, especially those things that are not claiming to be something. Like I could claim to know everything about your history, or somebody could claim to have the system for anything. But we're not looking for claimants, but we're very, very interested in having women on who are accomplished, just like our guest today, Irena Scott, PhD. Welcome, Irena.
Yes, hearty welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure entirely. So I wonder, I figured since we wouldn't leave you waiting in the sidelines too long, perhaps you wouldn't mind, enumerating some of your background in terms of education and where you've worked and that sort of thing. And we'll just hold tight and listen because it's extremely impressive.
Well, I survived it anyway. My career has been in science, and I've been in UFOs as a hobby. My PhD was from the University of Missouri College of Veterinary Medicine. I had a postdoctoral position at Cornell University and a professorship at St. Bonaventure University. My MS was from the University of Nevada, and my BS was from OSU, Ohio State University, with majors in biology and astronomy. I've done research and teaching at the University of Nevada and the Ohio State University College of Medicine. I'm also well-trained in photographic analysis and aircraft identification, which is pertinent to my book.
Yes.
Been employed by the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, in PhD level research as a GS-11 in satellite photography with security clearances that are above top secret in the government. I've also worked in divisions. One of them was Air Order of Battle, which should actually be a government monitoring point for UFO activity. I've been stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I knew the archivist there who showed me all through Wright-Patterson and in the secret areas and all kinds of things. And also I've been stationed there so that I could get on the base and everything, stayed in a base hotel. I've also been employed in MS level work as a physical science cartographer at it used to be called the Aerospace Center, and it's changed its name several times, and it's moved. It used to be in St. Louis, Missouri. And these positions use satellite photography. so that my experience included using satellite photography to look at a certain area of the Earth and identifying all flying craft over it. I've also worked at Battelle Memorial Institute. I've been a correspondent for Popular Mechanics magazine with articles in photography in its technology update and science sections. I was a volunteer astronomer at the Ohio State University Radio Observatory called Big Ear, and it's famous for the SETI signal.
Oh, yeah.
The wow signal, right?
Yeah.
WOW signal that might be humanity's only signal from ET. And I'm also an amateur astronomer. My publications include books, numerous papers in peer-reviewed scientific journals, articles in magazines and newspaper. My published photography has appeared in magazines and on TV. And I wanted to be an astronomer, and that's what I started out as, but at that time they didn't hire females. And I had no luck at all because nobody would give me even an application when I tried to apply. So I went into other fields, but I've always been interested in astronomy. So that's my...
Well, you sound actually, I think if someone were to be trained in UFO identification and exploration and identification, I mean, you're a perfect background for that.
I think so,
and
too.
I congratulate you on your career. When did you find time to eat?
And have a family.
Really? Really?
Well, when I was in school, I didn't have enough money to eat hardly.
Okay. Join the club, right?
Well, I just want to make one personal note before we go into our show proper, and that is to tell you, Irena Scott, how much I enjoy the video cam that you set up on your homestead. It's a small family farm kind of place. I kind of get that idea. And you have a video cam set up from time to time, and you put postings up on Facebook, and we see all these wild animals living right around the corner in Ohio, and they're right around the corner here too in New York and New Jersey. So I just want to thank you for that and the enjoyment that gives me. But now on to our shattered reality subject. The beginning of your latest book, which is called Inside the Lightning Ball, and is about ball lightning and orbs and lightning, and St. Elmo's fire is in there and everything. And I just found that very, very interesting. And as a person who has seen several orbs in her life and who has been privileged to see 3 fireballs come down from the sky, which I understand is unusual, but only one of them was life-changing. The other 2 were very interesting from an astronomical point of view. Could you kindly tell us how you see the difference between these different phenomena?
Well, I intended to start my book by saying I saw a lightning ball. It was when I was 5 years old, and I was just going to say that, I mean, what I originally planned to say was that I don't identify anything that's flying around and lit up as a UFO, and that I know prosaic things and don't think my experiences were with something like lightning balls. But as I got into it, I started to do research on lightning balls. And the subject is a lot more confusing than I had an idea it was, because science really can't explain lightning balls. So I mentioned that first experience, and I was going to go on and say, well, I don't think lightning balls or UFOs or all that. And so then after I started doing research, I found out science doesn't know much at all about lightning bolts, and they're just as mysterious as UFOs. And there may be some overlap. And so I was saying, I think lightning balls are pertinent to studying ball lightning is pertinent to UFO study, because some may be either one or both. And they show a lot of characteristics like UFOs show a lot of characteristics similar to lightning balls in some cases. And so I went into lightning balls in a lot more detail than I intended to, and described my own experience with lightning balls before I got into UFOs.
Well,
Yeah, my mother was hit by a ball lightning.
really?
Yeah, it just went up her body and then out the other side. We always
she-
figured that was the way she was. That was because of that. But yeah, no, it did not affect her really. She's
She
just
didn't
scared.
suffer any
No,
damage?
No, scared the hell out of her. But no. But that's interesting. So you're really trying to investigate things that have no immediate explanation. And you're right in that both objects are without really ready, rigorous academic explanation. Have you come to any conclusions at all? Because I'm really curious to see what you think about all this stuff.
Well, one main conclusion is that I think they seem to separate lightning bolts from UFOs, although some people have written books saying all UFOs are lightning bolts and things like that.
Uh-huh.
It's my opinion that since lightning bolts are considered prosaic and UFOs are not in general by science, that they ought to study lightning bolts more and get all their characteristics in, which are pretty weird because they may go through walls and all kinds of things like is reported with UFOs. And since this is something science can kind of grasp and study,
Okay.
I think it ought to be studied in more detail.
Mm-hmm.
It's relevant to the UFO phenomena.
Yeah, so this you can actually collect data on.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then perhaps use that data to interpret some of the UFO phenomena.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I have something of a statement here, and that is that I've seen 4 orbs in my life. 2 of those orbs followed along the baseboard of 2 different buildings in bedrooms that I was staying in. And as such, I suppose they could have been ball lightning or lightning balls. On the other hand, they were both acid green, and one of them followed the death of a dog of mine. That being said, one of them that I just mentioned and another one which I saw outdoors through the window of a house were connected with a woman who had been my friend, who was not particularly involved with UFOs, but was involved with earth spirituality, like goddess studies and that sort of thing. And she, in fact, took a lot of photographs of lights around her performance of mask making and told me that there were lights around her and her then husband all the time. So just because that's who I am, I'm going to, because I don't like binary conclusions to things. I like there to be possibly more things available. So we have ball lightning or lightning balls that apparently have something to do with lightning strikes. We have orbs or similar things associated with UFOs. And here we have orbs associated 3 times, to my knowledge, with this woman who deals with earth-based spirituality, is partially Native American, and deals with, as I say, earth-based things all the time. So what do you make of that, Irena?
That's very interesting. Does she take photographs of her orbs?
Well,
Video?
I'm going to be specific here. One time, the orb that I saw was at the baseboard of her mother's house where I was staying. The mother had like maybe 15 cats. And I personally sort of felt like it might have been the spirit of a departed cat or something, but I have no reason to claim that. The second orb I saw around her in her environment was while I was at a house that she was living in, renting, in New York State. And this was something that was passing by the window. And at first, I thought it was probably a firefly. And then I said, wait a minute, this was over an inch in diameter and had no other source there, was not blinking on and off like a firefly, which reminds me of something in your book. Now, in terms of her taking photographs, she did indeed take photographs. She's a performance artist and a sculptor and a mask maker. So she was making these masks, and she had different women performing the different goddesses, like Spider Woman and different female goddesses from around the world, particularly Native American ones, and she had women in costumes wearing the mask and dancing around. And when she took photographs of several of these goddess figures, they had lights adhered to them, little tiny lights, and these were not being worn by the performers. These just showed up in the photographs. So that's what I have to say about that. So,
Well, I think there's an overlap between what you'd call orbs, lightning balls, and UFOs, and poltergeists. Because if you see a small thing like a small lightning ball that acts in a funny way, it might be a UFO or a small UFO or an orb or something like that. And so I was my first chapter was on lightning balls, and I was trying to say that there might be several things, that lightning balls may be a conglomeration, as UFOs may be, of several different things.
yes.
And I went into detail about lightning balls because after I thought about that, well, I had seen several, and from the title of my book, I might have even been inside one. And I also found out that my family had seen a number of lightning balls too, to my surprise. Apparently it's pretty rare to do that. But I was changing my book right up practically until it went into publication, as I found out more about my family having sightings. So anyway, I was trying to delineate what I know about lightning balls and compare that to how they may be different from UFOs. And I had an interesting experience that I talked about that may have related to UFOs too. I used to visit people and stay in this house in Texas, and at one time I was out on a patio with my video camera going, and suddenly lightning hit. And I think the bolt hit right beside me, but I was on a patio that was insulated by having wooden posts and things, and it didn't kill me.
Well, it's good.
Thank goodness.
Because I got a really close picture, and normally it would kill a person and destroy the camera and everything, I think. This was a big bolt of lightning. But my camera was working, and it recorded this big whiteout, and that's what I saw. It looked like a big whiteout all around me, maybe with kind of boundaries, like it was a big blob or something. And then my eyes weren't working because it was so bright, but my camera came back on, and there was a cell tower about 125 feet away, about 150 feet away, and my camera came on after the whiteout that happened where I was, and then it recorded the electricity shorting up a guy wire from the cell tower. And then after that, the fire alarm went off. And so you could kind of study what happens when lightning occurs. And it was pretty odd because I was right there and I actually taped the white out, and then the electricity going up the guy wire. The guy wire was a big, thick thing. And so I could figure that probably in a radius of like 120 feet around me, that anybody standing on the ground might have got killed by that lightning. It was really impressive. And it was impressive because I thought I might have been a lightning ball inside of one.
Wow.
By some definitions.
Was there a storm at the time, or did this just come out of the clear blue?
There were storm clouds, and I didn't hear a thunder until that happened. And then I was kind of blinded and deafened, and I went in the house, and I just don't remember. It might have rained afterwards. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, that was a pretty startling experience. Wow.
What year was this?
It was, I'd have to look. I think it's 2012 or 13.
Oh, so recently.
Yeah.
Oh. All right.
But I had another experience at the same place, and you've heard of the Marfa lights?
Oh, yes.
Well, the patio I was on faced this big crater of several miles, but on the other side of the house was another patio that faced Marfa. It was about 20 miles away, and you could see it with a telescopic lens. And I was kind of used to seeing Marfa, and I'd looked at, they even have a Marfa viewing area for UFOs and things, and I wasn't too impressed with that. I just thought people saw cars driving around the mountains and saw their lights and things. So I was very used to seeing Marfa. But one day I went on the other patio facing Marfa. It was night, and there was a light that was hovering above Marfa. It looked like it was. It was a big light. It was low and close to Marfa. And so I started filming it. And it just stayed there without moving. And it was after around 12 o'clock at night, and the airport closes at 5, and there's hardly any air traffic around. And so it just stayed there. It didn't move like an airplane would. And so I filmed away, and it disappeared and reappeared. But mostly it just stayed in the same place, which is pretty weird because airplanes move.
Indeed.
And you could see the stars and everything, but at one point as I was filming it, things lit up, and I suppose that was heat lightning. I don't know, but there was something lit up while it was happening. This was a real deserted place, and there wasn't any traffic, and especially not at night, because just this zigzag trail goes up, and you could hardly drive it in a car. And so there weren't cars running around to, make light and things like that. And so, anyway, I didn't know. I thought maybe this was a Marfa light, but the area around Marfa, people are familiar with the UFO type phenomena, but there's also a huge amount of geological phenomena around Marfa, and it's in a huge crater or cauldron. I mean, it's extinct for many, many years, but it was just a huge volcanic cauldron that was just unlike anything that's happened in millions of years, and it was tied into the orogeny that made the Rocky Mountains and things. And so, anyway, I thought that maybe this could have been like an earth light or a earthquake light or something like that. And people have compared Marfa lights to places where there's geological, unusual happenings. So I got two pretty interesting videos, one place.
Well, you speak of early experiences in your life too, something that sort of started you off on this path?
It started me off, but it wasn't something I knew about. When my sister and I were very young, that's one reason I also covered lightning balls, was to sort of compare them to this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this seemed a lot different from lightning balls, and there were a lot of things I could use to compare them and contrast. When my sister and I were young, my sister hadn't started school yet, so she was 4 or 5, and I was a couple of years older. And we were in a bedroom. We were in a farmhouse and very rural, and we were poor. And after my parents put in electricity, they bought one radio and just played particular stations, so that we never heard of UFOs or lightning balls or anything else. So we weren't influenced by the media at all. And we were in beds in opposite sides of a room. It was an attic room with slanted walls to the ceiling and things like that. And we both woke up at approximately the same time, and something was flying around the room. And you said yours kind of followed the baseboard or something. Mm-hmm. Well, this was just a random thing. It was like it was browsing. It just flew around the room, up and down, back and forth and across, and sort of like a butterfly looking for flowers or something. It wasn't anything that you'd think of as mechanical. And we didn't say anything to each other. I didn't know she was awake. She apparently thought I was. But we just watched it. And at that young age, we both thought this is abnormal, because it seemed to be able to guide itself. And it'd come to a wall, and it would turn about a foot before it got there. It kind of followed the room and got near both of us, but it avoided the furniture. The room was dark. It was a clear night, too. It wasn't anything it was just a clear, nice night with no thunder or anything like that either. So that's another reason we didn't think it was a lightning bolt. But it just flew around the room like that, and we both just watched it. And then after a while, it had been in this browsing motion. It went to the south side of the room, and toward the floor, and then it flew up to the ceiling. But it didn't hit the ceiling. It turned before it got to the ceiling and flew along the ceiling to a chandelier in the room. The chandelier was turned off, so there shouldn't have been any electricity to influence it. And it started circling the chandelier. And the walls came up close to the chandelier, but it didn't feel its way around. It didn't feel its way to the chandelier or the walls or anything. It just flew to the chandelier, got about a certain distance away from it, and started circling. It circled and circled and circled and circled. Each circle was in the same place. And I think it speeded up. And then it started, after a while, it came down in sort of a spiral. It was very geometrical right under the chandelier. And the spiral it was like you could draw a line from the chandelier to the floor, and the spiral got shorter, or had a smaller radius as it went down. And then suddenly both of us became absolutely terrified. It was the most terror I ever felt in my life. We shrieked and screamed and ran for the stairs. We fell down the stair steps, and there was a door at the bottom. We finally managed to get it open and went down screaming to our parents. And this seemed a lot different from a lightning ball.
What was it that scared you so badly? I mean, because it does sound almost, I know you know, as you said, you were not exposed to any events of that nature on the media, but it didn't sound like that frightening. It sounded like something that would make a child curious rather than frightened. There must have been something threatening about it.
Well, I've been discussing, since my book came out, I've been discussing that a little bit more with some people. Because I felt it, there's animate and inanimate, and I felt this was animate because it seemed to be able to guide itself and know where things were, which didn't seem like, just a physical thing. But, yeah, I'm not too sure what our natural idea was, but we just seemed curious and wondered. And then we became absolutely terrified. And it was like we had some kind of mind control because we both woke up at the same time for no reason at all. And then we both became terrified for the same reason. And it was like something was controlling our fear, something like it just turned on a switch and suddenly we were both terrified.
And you have corroboration, as I recall from the book, that with your sister, with your mother, and also with a cousin or something, that in fact this event did occur basically as you have told it. I have only one question about the room. At the time of the sighting, was the chandelier on or off?
It was off.
Okay.
It was dark.
So we can rule out the idea that it was a moth circling the chandelier, because moths do that sort of thing and often end their lives by putting their bodies onto the hot bulb of the light fixture. But the light fixture was off. There was no light emanating from it.
Oh, the object was lit. I mean, that's another thing that's odd, was it looked like a piece of metal. It was about 1 inch in diameter, and it glowed, and it looked like hot metal. And so about that, too, it had power some way, and it didn't just fly around, it could fly up, and then it circled the chandelier. And if it was just inanimate, why would it circle a chandelier and things like that? So it seemed like it was a lot different than, like a moth wouldn't glow for one thing.
Certainly not. The moth wouldn't glow, but I was kind of fending off certain comments that we might get on our podcast because I don't believe you mentioned that the light was out. So having read your book, I know that the light wasn't on and that the object, in fact, glowed. But I wanted you to just to reiterate it for our listeners. I do want to make a point, which I think is the central thesis of your book, Irena, and that is that scientists, contrary to common lore, L-O-R-E, lore, scientists do, in fact, see UFOs and have paranormal phenomena happen to them, A, and B, people can be multiple experiencers, and this can be very honest. I know that my wonderful co-host here, Kate, is an experiencer. Our engineer, Bill, is an experiencer, and I am also a multiple experiencer. So I'm very interested in that thesis of the book about the scientists being experiencers and about people being multiple experiencers. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, the main idea behind my book is that I was posing the idea that the main criticism used about UFOs, where people say they don't exist, is because they say scientists don't accept or acknowledge UFOs, and there's no peer-reviewed literature. And so I was going against that by saying, yes, scientists do see UFOs. In fact, astronomers see more than normal. And I don't know about peer-reviewed literature, but I wrote 5 papers that were in the peer-reviewed literature. And so I think the idea that science doesn't accept that phenomena is incorrect, and I was trying to encourage scientists to say more. I think scientists don't say anything. and I think they should. But I mentioned sightings by a number of scientists, and one physics professor who did a real good study of UFOs in real time and everything else, set up a field experiment where they had stations and scientists were at the stations with equipment. And he said he saw 160 UFOs, which, they say scientists never see a one. Well, he certainly did.
Indeed.
And it was scientifically validated, too, because the stations were in contact with each other, and they could tell when something flew by, and they had standards to tell whether it's a normal airplane and everything like that.
Well, I will mention at this juncture one of my favorite people, which is Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the late astronaut who I had the pleasure of meeting. And he had a PhD from MIT, and that is hardly shabby. And he was a firm believer in UFOs, in extraterrestrial intelligence, if you will. And also, he founded the IONS, Institute of Noetic Sciences, out in Petaluma, California, to study some of these phenomena. And so a lot of the astronauts have spoken, Gordon Cooper amongst them, about UFOs that they saw. Now, the only thing that we can debate about that is not the veracity of Dr. Mitchell or Gordon Cooper, who I don't know what his educational background is, so if I'm not giving him his proper due, forgive me. But I think the only thing that we can debate, and I have no intention of debating it right now, is whether or not these UFOs, unidentified flying objects, are extraterrestrial or not. I mean, they could be other things, but that's beside the point. That they exist is indisputable, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I think the whole subject of UFOs might be a sort of a conglomeration of more than one thing, too, because nobody knows what they are, and so they could be orbs, ET, or something else that is beyond our understanding.
Well, speaking of ET, no better training to discussing ETs than being a veterinarian, because I'm sure life forms are universal, and it would be interesting to see if indeed they were ETs, which we all sort of, I don't know, I always hope that they are, but that they're somewhat similar to us, and not the cephalopods that were portrayed in that last movie. I mean, that was good, but I'd really like to have something that we can identify with. And since you are in sort of the life sciences, Jill Tarter once made a point where if the dinosaurs had continued to evolve, they would have evolved into sort of a mammalian figure, because, the eyes are placed such, the feet, in other words, to survive, a human being has a lot of advantages. If there were life on a similar planet to Earth, do you think it would evolve sort of the way we did, and that type of being, or what do you think? I'm just curious. I mean, obviously you don't know. Unfortunately, none of us do, but what would you think?
Well, it's confusing because lightning bolts are so complex.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I read all these scientific papers on lightning balls, and they say it may contain the inside of a lightning ball may contain quantum mechanical things, string theory, positrons, electrons, and nuclear explosions and everything else, so that inside a lightning ball may be something really complex physics. And I considered that too with UFOs. The common thing is to think, well, there's human appearing pilots, and they come from outer space. And that's certainly a theory that makes sense and everything. But they might be something totally different that we can't even imagine, too.
Yeah, I sort of hope not because although I agree that that is obviously a real possibility, but I don't think you could really relate that well. I mean, I think the whole artificial intelligence thing starts to creep in because these things are immortal and therefore they have literally all the time in the universe to fly around and investigate things. But it's not something. It's something you could understand and all, but not really relate to particularly. That's why. Who's your friend, David?
Biedny?
Yeah, he always said, if you had your druthers, what would you hope for as far as aliens?
UFOs, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'd like. Something not quite as harsh as Klingons, maybe Romulans or. I don't know.
Well, let me make a point that you partially made in the book, Irena, and that is that the lightning ball has been thought about as possibly enveloping a mini black hole. And when you think of places like these portal areas, the Skinwalker Ranch out in the Uinta Basin in Utah comes to mind, that there might be a portal area created by the lightning ball by which these quote-unquote others, whatever they may be, extraterrestrials, beings on a different plane than us, a different dimensional plane, whatever they are, people from the future or the past or whatever, perhaps these lightning balls, were they mini black holes within, as you have postulated, might cause a portal area to be open.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't saying I thought they were some particular thing. I was just saying I'm trying to be open-minded and consider a lot of possibilities because I don't think there's evidence that all UFOs are one thing, and that there's a lot of ideas on what they might be, and I don't want to center on one thing and say, oh, I think they're, aliens. Some of them may be, though. So
It's good to have an open mind about this and weigh all possibilities. And I will also just very quickly throw in there that even if a number of the UFOs do cause ETs to come here, or they're encased in these UFOs, that doesn't mean that even extraterrestrials all come from the same place. I mean, some could come from a different galaxy, some could come from Beta Reticuli, some could come from the Pleiades. We just, it's no reason for us to assume that all ETs come from Venus or whatever. I'm being
Facetious.
a little bit
Venusian.
Venusian here. Yeah, I'm being a little bit humorous here. But now, perhaps you'd like to tell us about one of your UFO experiences, as in the one up by Boston, or one of those which occurred in the Ohio State University area.
the Boston one, it will take me a while. I'll try to describe it fast. If I really described it in detail, it would take about 4 hours because it's kind of long. So I will try to do it fast. My sister and I were living on the East Coast. I was working for the DIA, as I mentioned, and she was at Drew University taking postgraduate work. And we wanted to see since we were there, we wanted to see the eastern states. And we went up to Massachusetts and Boston, and we were going to go on up and look around just to see the New England states. We were planning to stay at Boston, and we got to Boston. It was still daylight, and so we went up Route 3 from Boston, and later I found out that's where the Hills had their experience. But we came down to Boston, and we couldn't find a hotel. And so we were going to look around the outer belt. And as we were leaving Boston, we saw this funny thing flying around. it was south of us, and it seemed to be going south, and it seemed to just have sort of an erratic flight pattern. It wasn't like an airplane going straight someplace. It just seemed to browse or mosey around. And my sister kept saying, this is really odd. And I kept arguing with her and saying it was a helicopter with its landing lights on. I'd never seen anything like that, but I wanted an explanation for what it was. And so we kept seeing it. And we had real repressive parents. We weren't allowed to talk about UFOs or anything weird. But we both admitted to each other then that we had seen UFOs before. And anyway, we kept following it, and we kept arguing because I wanted to find a hotel, and I was driving, and she was watching it. And she said, well, you couldn't miss it. It was real bright light. There were no other lights on it, and it wasn't flying anything like an airplane. And it was low. And we could see other airplanes. There was an airport close by. We could see the airplanes go in and land and fly over and things like that. And they looked like airplanes. And this didn't look anything like an airplane. And so we kept following it. And we got on Route 95 and we're going south. And there was a woods on one side. Maybe both sides. And I saw this round thing in the woods. It wasn't moving. It was either on or near the ground. It was pretty close to us. And it was flashing just through a spectrum of light. It had a spectrum of different shades of red and different shades of blue. And it had sort of a dark thing over it that seemed to rotate around it. And I couldn't imagine what it was. And I just couldn't imagine it. And then as we were driving by, the inside of our car lit up in green. And it was like Christmas tree lights were in it or something. And I couldn't imagine what was happening because I looked around. I thought there must be a beam of light shining into our car. But I couldn't see a beam. I couldn't see any green on the outside. And the thing on the ground, I thought it must be shining a beam at us. But it was never green. It was different. It had a spectrum, but it didn't include green. And so I couldn't imagine what was going on. And in thinking about it later, I think I would have noticed if the inside of other cars lit up in green. And so I think it was something specific to our car. I didn't think about that then. I had no idea what. We weren't into UFOs or anything. And I just had no idea.
But you continued to drive? And you continued to drive? Did this sort of follow you along, or had you pulled over?
No, I didn't pull over.
Mm-hmm. So you continued to drive, and the light stayed on in your car?
It just for a while.
Okay.
And I wasn't even thinking about UFOs. If I had been, I'd have taken out a camera and started taking pictures. But I was looking for a motel, and I wondered what on earth that was. And my sister kept saying, she thought there was a UFO up ahead. And I was arguing with her. And so anyway, as we continued, she started yelling at me to stop and saying that it was going to pass over us. It was going to cross the road and pass over us. We were on a freeway. And she was very, very insistent. I thought she was crazy and was telling her this is a helicopter. And anyway, so I decided to stop. And I looked over to the east, and I saw something like a meteor a long ways away. And then right over the treetops, this thing came over. And it was... it's hard to say how large it was or how far away because it was night and I had no idea its size, but it was very, very clear. It had 7 square windows in a row. It had a very small green light on one side and red light on the other. And my sister and I have a whole lot of experiencing blimps because our family farm has a freeway through it. It has a blimp route. And we've seen all kinds of blimps, including ones with lit up sides and all kinds of things. And over freeways at night, so we had a lot of experience with that. And I included a blimp picture in my book, but I have a lot of videos of them too. And so we were used to seeing blimps. And this was nothing like a blimp. It was silent, and the lights had a blinking pattern of 2 lights, 3 lights in the front and 4 lights in the back could blink separately. And we thought they were windows. And anyway, it took me a while. I had a camera in the car and in the trunk and a film in one place. And I had to find the film and the camera in the dark and then load it. And it was a Polaroid, so it took a while to do that. And so anyway, the thing was right up above us. My sister thought it was about 70 feet up. I don't know. It was going slow. And I thought, oh, I'm going to get a picture of the inside of a UFO. I mean, I just changed my mind, was no longer arguing with my sister by then. And I decided she was right. And so I had my camera just ready to take a picture. And a truck driver drove over in front of us and came back. And he was standing kind of close to me. And he asked what we were doing. And, you know, we don't talk to strange men or say UFOs around somebody, you know, strange man at night or anything. And there was an airport there. And so I pointed at it and said, "What's that?" You know, like it was an airplane. And he rotated just exactly 180 degrees in the exact opposite direction, looked to the same altitude, and said, "I don't see anything." Then he rotated his body back, and, you know, his face pointed at me again. And he said the same thing. And so I pointed to it again and said, "What's that?" And he rotated around, looked in the opposite direction, and then came back and pointed to his head, like giving us the cuckoo sign. And that was pretty weird. And I just thought of this since I wrote the book. But, I mean, he didn't look around and not see it. He must have known where it was because he could look in the opposite direction from where it was when he said he didn't see anything. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure he knew where it was. And so, anyway, if I'd have thought of that, I'd have put it in the book. But anyway, he went back to his truck and sat there and watched us.
Oh, boy.
And I still wanted to get, and it was very intimidating. And I still wanted to get the picture. And so I was on the freeway, and I knew I had to take a time exposure. And there was a hill with some trees. And so I ran up the hill, and fortunately there was a bald spot on top of the hill. And the trees would sort of, I don't think there was too much chance of getting limb flares anyway, but I wanted to be real careful. So I very carefully aimed the camera and took pictures. And Polaroids take a while because after you take the pictures, you have to pull them out and code them and things like that. So it takes a while to do all that. But I have the actual photographs still, and there's no way you could ever digitize them or do anything with the computer because they're just photographs, physical photographs. But anyway.
And these photographs are in the book because we have the non-photo version.
Yeah, they're
cool.
in the book. There was just one of them, but it's in the book and analyzed because I was a photo analyzer, a photo analyst. And so anyway, what happened then is that I came down the hill and pulled the photos off their backing and coded them, and the thing went over to the airport. And it began to circle in this really weird circle over. It seemed like it was over the airport, and it would start wherever it started, directly south, and turn off its lights and move in a semicircle toward the north. I think it was going counterclockwise, and it'd turn its lights on for a brief while, turn them back off, then about 60 to 30 degrees, it would turn them back on and then turn them off. Then when it was directly north, it would be south. And it was so fast you couldn't even imagine it. And I would just remember each time it went in a semicircle south. It was too fast to even see. And then I believed my sister when she said this thing had been moving really fast. And she had also said that when I was taking my pictures, apparently the time maybe I was talking to the man, that the big UFO with the object with the 7 windows was one place, and then it was someplace else. And I didn't notice that at all, because I think I was thinking about photography and talking to that person. But later, many years later, when I read her write-up, I did think it wasn't exactly where I thought it should be. But anyway, I came back to the car, and we didn't know where it would go after it circled the airport. And we could also see the planes up above, and nothing was landing while it was there. They seemed to be circling the airport. And anyway, I decided to turn my car around because I thought it had been going south, but for some reason I thought it was going to go north. And so I got on the freeway and began looking for an intersection. I got on the freeway thinking about I was going to look for an intersection and turn the car around. Well, the truck driver got right in behind us, right on our bumpers.
Oh, that's creepy. That is creepy.
Well, I thought we were going to get killed, myself.
Wow.
And he was right on my bumper, like right feet behind us, and showing his bright light in my mirror.
Huh.
Well, I could see. And I know he was chasing us because if I switched lanes or slowed down or speeded up, he did the same thing, which was terrifying. And I thought we were going to get killed. And then I wanted to get away from him, and I couldn't figure out how. And so I thought I would drive down. I was going like 80 or something as fast as the car was going. He was right on my bumper, shining his bright lights in my face through the mirror, and I couldn't see a thing. And so anyway, I thought I would go to an intersection and swerve off the road from the left-hand side because he wouldn't expect me to do that. And if there had been a car going faster around him on the right-hand side, we'd have got killed or had a really bad accident. So I did it, and we survived.
Good.
We're glad to have you here today, Irena.
That was a scary experience.
That's an amazing story, too. And I'm sure our listeners will want to hear the full name of the book and where they might get it. So please, go for it.
It's called Inside the Lightning Ball, Scientific Studies of Lifelong UFO Experiencers. It's for sale on Amazon.com, and it should just show up. You put the name in, or also I have a website, Irena Scott, and it should pop up. And you can order it just by clicking on the book on the website too, so it's not hard to find.
So before we let you go, because we are at the hour point now, and we so much enjoyed speaking with you and hearing your occurrences there, what's up next for Dr. Irena Scott?
I don't know. I used to work at Battelle, and they did some investigating of UFOs, and I have some more material on that. They had really good ideas, but I don't think they had funding. And I might think about putting some material out about that I have. And otherwise, I haven't thought about what else to do.
Well, with as creative a mind as yours, I'm sure you'll figure out something. I think I speak for both Kate and myself in saying that it's been a real pleasure and honor to have you on our show, Shattered Reality Podcast, for the second time. And keep putting out those animal videos because I just love those. So thank you very much. Please keep in touch. Let us know if you have a new publication out, whether it be a book or a paper. We would be more than pleased to have you back on again, Irena.
Yeah, well, really. Thank you.
And I was really honored, so thank you very much.
Wow. The honor's all ours.
Yes, our pleasure entirely. And thank you so much for being on Shattered Reality Podcast. Have a good evening.
Take care now.
You do too, both of you. Okay. And Bill.
And Bill. Bill is still here. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Whoa, that was a scary experience.
Wow. It echoes the idea of Men in Black and that sort of thing. Though she didn't happen to mention if the guy was dressed in black, and it was a number of years ago, so I don't know whether she remembered that part. We should have asked her perhaps for a physical description.
I can still hear you.
Oh, okay. Do you want to quick give us a
We
physical?
weren't saying anything bad.
We weren't saying anything bad, but did you have a physical description you wanted to add of the gentleman? The gentleman, I use the word loosely since he was trying to nearly run you off the road. The guy I'll just call him a guy. The guy in the truck. What was his physical description?
I don't know. I didn't notice anything about him because when I was talking to him, I was also thinking about I'm missing that good picture.
Ah, yeah.
Of course.
It's dark, and I didn't notice anything unusual about his appearance, but his actions were certainly odd.
Indeed. Indeed they were.
Yeah, and he didn't seem to have an accent. I was in Boston, and I thought he should have an accent, but he didn't. He sounded just like, normal.
Didn't say you can't get there from here.
Yeah, that's right.
In any case, please, people in Boston, forgive me. No insult intended. No slur. No slurs, regional slur intended.
No.
So anyway, I guess that we'll be back again in a couple of weeks with a fantastic new guest.
Okay.
And, we take a while between our podcasts because we really like to be very clear about who we're picking to be our guests. But if you, dear listeners out there, would like to have a moment or two on the show to talk about your experience, we occasionally have the last 15 minutes of the show for Listener's Corner, in which some of our listeners give their stories of unusual paranormal phenomena.
Yeah, or they can post it on the website or not?
Well, they can post on any of our websites, and I'm going to go through that now, a long list. We are on Facebook as a radio station, Shattered Reality Podcast, but the category is radio station because that's the closest category that I was able to find. And we really appreciate any comments, and also if you can like our Facebook page, Shattered Reality Podcast. We do appreciate it, and comments are possible there. In addition, all of our podcasts are on shatteredrealitypodcast.wordpress.com, and most of them are on both shatteredrealitypodcast.com and our YouTube channel. And so there are a multiplicity of places, including iTunes, where you can place a comment. And Stitcher Radio. So we've got right there like 6 places for you to talk to us. So come out of the forest, come up from the basement or down from the attic or wherever the heck you might be, and communicate with us at Shattered Reality Podcast. And so...
Wait. A little announcement. Tonight is June 26th, and Saturn is in direct opposition to the sun and will be very bright in the early evening sky, especially around midnight tonight for those of us in the Northeast.
Cool. Well, thank you, Kate.
And if you have... It's edge on, too, so you really get a good view of the rings now.
And about what magnification do you think a person would have to get any glimpse of the rings?
Just good field binoculars.
Good field binoculars? Oh, I'm on it. I'm out there. I'm going to look. I'm going to look tonight. Well, thank you so much. Any other
Nope. That's it.
announcement,
Nope.
Kate?
Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
so for now... Goodbye from Shattered Reality.